Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome again with me Finisa in Introduction to Communication Science. So after we learned about the levels of communication yesterday, we will move on to another material. Today, we will learn about the verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal and nonverbal communication relate to our previous material. In the maybe third or fourth meeting, I ever explained that the communication have some elements, right? There are communicators, communicant, messages, channel, and in the others. So the verbal and nonverbal communication includes in messages elements. So wherever you communicate, maybe in interpersonal communication, group communication, and then the others level, there are only two types of messages. For the first is verbal, and then the second is nonverbal. So we can change the term in here that I use the verbal and nonverbal communication, but some people say that it's not communication but symbols or maybe the messages. So it's not the verbal communication, but it is it called the verbal symbol or maybe non-verbal symbol or maybe verbal language or non-verbal language. So yeah, I think it doesn't matter and it was the same things. Before we go into the explanation, I'll tell you first that our material today will relate to our final project. In our course, we have the final project. You should the practice of public speaking. The material of the public speaking we will discuss it in the next week. But the use of the verbal and then non-verbal communication in the public speaking is the key. How to make your public speaking interesting and then important. So please watch the video to the detailed explanation and let's move on to the material. The first type is verbal communication. To sum up, the verbal communication is the communication using words. So it could be spoken and then written. So the verbal communication have a clear arrangement of the letters. And then the sign of the verbal communication is you can use your dictionary to find the meaning of the words. There are several types of verbal communication. Actually, this is not really a type, but it, you can say that this is the style of communication. For the first is emotive speech. Emotive speech is a verbal communication that concerns to reveal your psychological aspect. It's like when you tell your friend that I was so happy today. So the happy is the psychological aspect. And then the second is pathetic speech. Pathetic speech is a verbal communication that you can use to create the social relation, or the simply words is chit chat. If you ever maybe meet your old friend and then you ask your friend that, hi, what's up, what's going on, or how do you do? So yeah, this is the type of communication to create or maintaining the social relation. And then cognitive speech. Cognitive speech is refers to the verbal communication style, the informative style. So it was to the point, there's no meaning behind or motive behind your words. For example, if I explain about the verbal communication types, there's no motive that I want to create this social relation with you, or maybe I didn't reveal my emotion or my psychological aspect. So it is what it is. If I say about the type of verbal communication, so yes, the verbal communication is a cognitive speech. And then rhetorical speech. Rhetorical speech is the style of communication to influence the other. For example, by doing order or maybe seducing someone. And then metalingual speech. Metalingual speech is the verbal communication that concerned with the structure of the language. For example, if you learn about English, maybe you talk about the tenses, maybe you talk about grammar or something about it. It is includes in metalingual speech. And then the last type is poetic speech. Poetic speech is word shifting. It's like the uh, maybe you ever heard about the song that have beautiful words, or maybe you use the beautiful words in your caption in your Instagram. It means that the meaning of the words is the second motive. The first motive, it sounds so beautiful, or uh, it sounds so deep. So the poetic speech usually used to make the audience feeling impressive of your words. The second type is nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is the opposite of the verbal communication. Verbal communication is a communication using words, so the nonverbal communication is communication without words. There is a misunderstanding about the nonverbal communication. People usually using the nonverbal communication as a term or the synonym of the sign language. You know that if you spoke with your maybe your hands to the someone that have a physical deficiencies, this is so wrong, because the verbal communication and non-verbal communication is a general language. So we cannot stop using the non-verbal communication. This is not a sign symbol, this is not a sign language. This is the definition and differences between the verbal and the non-verbal communication. Yeah, actually you can read it by yourself, but the point is non-verbal communication is a complex language. Why? The first reason is non-verbal communication really depends on their context, and then the second really depends on their culture. Every culture have their rules to manage the use of nonverbal symbols. For example, greetings. In a previous section, I ever explained about the different differences between the greetings in Indonesia and another culture, like Western culture. In Indonesia, we usually using handshake for greetings, but in Western culture, I think they usually using hugs and maybe kissing for their greetings. So be careful if you want to find the meaning of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication have a several function. Actually, this function is related to the verbal communication. So nonverbal communication have a function to repeat, emphasize, substitute, contradiction, and then to regulate the verbal communication. So it's so hard when we say the nonverbal communication without the analyzing the verbal communication. The next material is type of nonverbal communication. For the first is kinetic. Kinetic, it means the body language. So yeah, we can use our body to say something. We can use our head, we can use our facial expression, we can use our eyes, we can use the hand gesture, and then the other part of our body. And then the second is haptics. Haptics is the sense of touching. So yeah, we can use our skin to say something. For example, there are several types of handshake. this type have a different meaning with this type, or these types, or maybe this type. So we can use our skin to say that, oh yeah, we are the close friend. Oh no, you are the stranger. Oh no, I don't want to touch you, or something like that. The third type of nonverbal communication is physical appearance. I would say that this is the congenital. So it could be our body shape or maybe our body color. It was different with the artifact. Artifact, it was something that we wear. So we can choose based on our characteristic. The reason why you choose the maybe the style of your clothes, maybe the color of your clothes, it is based on your characteristic. The next is environmental factor. I would say that this is the setting or the place of the communication event. So the room design, the smell, and then the color of the wall, it will affect to the communication. And then proxemic. Proxemic is like a personal distance. The distance will explain the type of relationship. For example, if you talk with your friend, usually you cut off your personal distance. It will different if you talk with the stranger. If you talk with the stranger, usually you take the distance during the conversation. The next is chronomics. Chronomics or use of time. Yeah, time is nonverbal communication. For example, the more comfortable we are with maybe someone will affect the frequency or the duration of the time that we will spend with him or her. And then paralanguage. Paralanguage is something that is spoken but not word. So it comes from our mouth but not words. For example, shh, or maybe hmm. It was the paralanguage. Or another example is our volume or our tone or maybe our intonation. It will affect or maybe have a different meaning. The last type of nonverbal communication is the silence. I would say that this is so hard to not to communicate with other people. Even the silence is a language. We usually using the silence when we feel angry or maybe we feel uncomfortable or maybe when we agree with something, we use the silence. So yeah, that's all our material today. So if you have a question, please contact me using an WhatsApp group or maybe using Open Learning. So thank you for your attention. See you next week. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.